Hey everyone, we are standing in front of a 9-unit apartment building in Aurora, Colorado, just outside of Denver. Same drill, we're gonna be going through the property, a quick rundown of the numbers, how the deal came about, some improvements on the inside, the outside, and why it makes sense as an investment, and why it makes sense as a great long-term rental play. So my co-host, Terrance is gonna fill us in on some details. So Terrance, it's a 9-unit with some interesting history though.
That's right, so initially this was built as a 5-unit. 20-some years ago, the owner was really smart, he was creative, he was able to chop up some of the units that were larger and turn into 9 units. So it's currently 5 1-bedrooms, 2 studios, and 2 2-bedrooms. So what was interesting when we were walking through it from the previous owner was they had a lot of issues with electrical and mechanical because they had 5 electrical meters and 5 furnaces. So that was part of the value add we were able to come in, which is why it sat on the market and why we were able to buy it.
So how did you find this deal?
So it was on the market for around 1.1, and actually you told me about it initially. You said, hey, my clients went and saw it, it's in really bad shape, you should take a look at it, it's overpriced, you should call them. And ironically, a few of my buddies had just switched over to this brokerage, had the listing I think a week after you told me about it. So I was able to call them, talk about it, and we were able to buy it for $925, and I think it was originally listed at $1.1.
Great, and then what type of financing are you taking down? Hard money, private, construction? What are you doing?
So on this one, we had more time to close. It was a younger seller. This was actually his first multifamily property. He had a couple flips, wanted to get into multifamily. This was his first multifamily. Didn't realize what he was getting into with all the mechanical and electrical and a CapEx, and didn't really understand how to interview property managers. Just had, a bunch of first-time issues come up. And so he wasn't as distressed, he just wanted to get out. So we actually closed with a bank. So we have 5% debt, we got 80% of purchase, and they actually gave us a construction loan as well to do some of the CapEx improvements.
Nice, now we'll talk about that at the end of the show when we dive into the financials. But what is your play here? Because I know it has those issues with the meters, but what's your standard play buying it to do what?
Yeah. So what initially intrigued us to this location was that we're 2 blocks from the Anschutz Medical Center, which is the largest medical campus in the West Coast. I think it's Utah, Arizona, Colorado, Wyoming, something like that. And it actually does $2.6 billion in economic revenue for the entire area, which is as much as the ski resorts combined. So most people don't know that. There's 30,000 jobs that come from that campus right there. And so that really intrigued us. So initially we were thinking we could hold it long term, and we still may do that. But we thought it made sense with buying it, because in this area, things are trading $140 to $150 a door right now, and we were buying this for basically $100 a door. So it made sense as a buy, improve the property, put in market tenants, and then possibly sell it as well.
And I like it from my angle, I love this part of town just because you said the upside, the location, the opportunity zones, great place to park money, ride the trend for 10 or 15 years.
That's right. This area is only going to continue to develop, so if you're on Peoria there, you can see a bunch of things turning. So that was what intrigued us as well.
Great, well let's go walk it.
Let's check it out.
All right, so we're inside one of your 2-2s here. Give us the rundown on what you're doing in this unit.
Yeah, so actually, I have a friend that's gonna stop by. She's wanted to know more about real estate, so I wanna bring her in, introduce her, and then I'll show you what we're doing.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Here she is. What's up?
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
Just in time.
Welcome, Teal.
Thank you.
So Teal's been a good friend. We've known each other since
2015?
2015-ish.
2015. 15, yeah.
So Teal and I met when I was just getting started doing my own flipping. I had been with another partnership. We were doing hundreds a year, but I was not the main operator. So I met her when I was just getting out of that, and she was working for a company called Net Worth. Mm-hmm. She was the top wholesaler there, and she really helped me get going in my real estate career. And now her and her husband are looking to buy possibly an investment property, want to understand multifamily, so I thought it'd be great for her to come check it out.
Yeah, that's right here.
Cool, well, we were just talking about what you did inside this unit, so tell us, tell everyone what you're doing.
So basically, the first thing we did, the walls were pretty disgusting. We skim coated the walls to make the texture look more even. We added a 4-inch baseboard trim along with an LVT floor. And basically LVT is what we use standard in apartments because it's just better for wear and tear with tenants. They're gonna beat it up, so we put something that's gonna last longer. It's waterproof and pretty resistant to banging, dinging, and childproof. So that's one of the things we did. So we got baseboard trim, paint. We put in new windows. So you see all new windows in all the units. And then we can go into the kitchen. So we kept the tile the same. We've kind of talked about property managers. You got to know the area. So when we were in this area, basically redoing the tile wasn't going to give us a bump in rent. So we just needed to clean it. But you can see a lot of the work went right here. So we did new cabinets, new granite, we did our subway tile backsplash, and then our shelves. So our shelves are standard. We started doing that about a year ago. And Teal, one of the big things with shelves is that, as you know, cabinets are really expensive. They're normally $150 to $200 a box. So in a standard kitchen, it's $400 to $500 for upper cabinets. What we started doing was taking those off and just doing shelves. So it adds kind of an industrial look. So aesthetically, it looks pretty cool for tenants, but it saves us $400 to $500 a kitchen. And when we're doing hundreds of kitchens a year, those numbers start to add up, and it doesn't really affect the rent. It actually, in some cases, helps us because it looks a little different. Yeah.
Sure.
So that's what we did in here, and then we did a new range. So the fridge we could just clean up. The fridge didn't really matter. We did a new range, so that's brand new. It looks like some of the guys were using it when they were
So
doing
I'm
it.
gonna call a timeout here. So I know we kind of threw you in the deep end here. Like, you got your clipboard, you prepped. Like, what questions do you have?
Well, I guess one of the things that I find intimidating about rehabbing properties is, where do you stop?
Right.
Where do you stop and you're just wasting money, as opposed to where do you just get the rents you need and move on? And where do you draw that line?
That's really good. So when we were walking in here, I talked about you got to have a property manager. So either you have to know it really well or you have to bring someone that knows it well. So when I was first starting out, I had a property manager and they would walk every single unit with me, and they would know the comps in the area, and they would say, okay, in this area, you don't need to change out the tile. So you could save $1,000 right here. Like if we would have redone all this tile, it would have been $1,000 in material, $1,000 in labor, right? And they were the ones that said, hey, you don't need to redo a new fridge. So that's $800. And so it's really important to have someone that knows the area and knows rent. So like if we were in a different part, let's say Sloan's Lake, we would have had to redo this tile because we wouldn't get the same rents if we had tile looking like this in the kitchen. So it's really important to know the area. It's driven by the area, and one of the best questions you can ask yourself is, who's our tenant gonna be here? So because it's a 2-bedroom in Aurora that'll rent for $1,300, which is pretty affordable for Denver for a 2-bedroom remodeled, we know that it's gonna be a family. They're gonna probably have 1 or 2 children. And so having tile in the kitchen is not gonna be their highest priority. What they want is safety. They want something that's clean, that has a lot of room. So as you can tell, the 2-bedroom is probably 800 square feet. So that's kind of what we look at. So we think about who's our tenant, and then we need to know the area. And if we don't know the area, we need to bring in someone that does.
Yeah. Basically, get your full rehab and then work backwards on what you can save on, because it won't increase the rent regardless.
Exactly. Like we could have gone and done a higher end granite here. It wouldn't have mattered. Like no family's gonna pay an extra $100 because of granite. We could have done a higher end tile for the floor. It wouldn't matter. We could have done a brand new fridge. It wouldn't have driven the rents. So that's the key, is knowing, what, based on the area, and having someone that really understands who the ideal tenant's going to be, and then working backwards from there.
Okay, so property managers are essential.
Essential, that's right.
Okay, makes
Key.
sense.
Let's check out the bathroom. So Teal, another kind of add-on to your question is, when is too much? So in other projects, especially like single family flips when we were first starting out, this wouldn't fly in a bathroom. You'd have to have tile on the floor. You're gonna sell a house in Denver for $400,000 to $500,000, but in a rental, we're able to continue the LVT through, and that saves us $2 a square foot. So that's another one of those things where just knowing the area, knowing the tenant, and so we have LVT, we have a new toilet, a new vanity, and all this is just a lower end finish. So this vanity is like $80, the mirror's like $30, the fixtures all together are $30, $40. So we're just doing things that are new and look really clean, but very affordable. And then we do our standard 12 by 24 tile, and then we stain the tub as opposed to putting in a new tub.
Okay.
So the tub looks brand new, but it's really 40 years old and just been stained.
It really does. So do you keep the same cosmetics in most every flip just to keep it simple?
That's right. So based on the demographics, so like in Denver, we would use a vanity that's $140 versus $80.
Okay.
Right? We'd probably use the same toilet. We'd use the same tile, we would just put it on the floor.
Okay.
So most of the stuff, yes, but then based on the area, we can upgrade or bring it down. So like if this was a Denver kitchen, we would have done a higher end granite. So we can scale up and back based on the area, but 60 to 70% of the materials we can use the same and just scale it. And so that helps us save costs and planning, and we don't have to feel like we have to redesign everything. Let's check out the rest of the unit.
And something else too, while you guys were talking about finishes in there, is the finishes between rental and a flip.
That's
I mean,
right.
because we met when you're doing a bunch of single family flips, which
right.
you buy, you rehab, you flip to an owner occupant.
That's right.
Where they want much nicer stuff, where in this stuff, you're buying, you're rehabbing to a rental grade, and you're selling to an investor.
That's absolutely
So talk
right.
about the finishes and quality there.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you nailed it. Like when you're flipping homes, and Teal, you know this from dealing with a bunch of flippers, is you have to think about really who the homeowner making the decision, primarily the wife, or mostly where you're catering to females. Mm-hmm. So everything has to be much higher end. And when someone's buying a home to live in themselves, they're much pickier on inspection. So one of the best things about buying apartments, I would say, versus homes is that, well, one, when you're going to sell it, it's cash flowing, right? When you're selling a flip, it's sitting there vacant and you're paying a bunch of taxes, insurance, mortgage. And then number two is that when you're doing an inspection with a homeowner, they're very, very picky. Like, all the times that you've sold, homes and to people, they're very, very picky when they're gonna own something or it's their investment, versus when you're just gonna have tenants, they're not as picky. They're not really gonna care about the backsplash. All they're gonna care about is the rent. What are people paying for this asset? But I think those are two of the biggest differences I've seen.
Great. Yeah. All right, let's go walk more of the property.
Cool.
All right, so Terrance, let's talk about the stuff on the outside, because what I like about your properties is you do a lot of the big CapEx items and you make it great for the long run. So what'd you do here?
Yeah, so when people talk about value add, I just look at you have to solve a problem. So when we bought this property, it had a bunch of issues on the exterior. The windows were really old. I think one of them was cracked, and there was snow and stuff coming into it the day that we closed. It had a really old roof. Water was coming in through the roof. The gutters were all just old. Leaves were falling through. So I think even here, I think this was like a dirt path here. So they had stopped the sidewalk, as you can see there. So we, installed a new sidewalk just to make it more friendly for children and pets and just livable. And then as you can see, they're working here. We're doing landscaping today. It's a beautiful day in January, so we're able to do just basically zero-scape it, because same thing, like in this part of the city, we're not going to need an irrigation system. We're in the Highlands, we're in Sloan's Lake. We pay for an irrigation system, have green grass. Here, zero-scape it, because when we turn the property over, it's going to be less expense for the new owner, right? Yeah. Or for ourselves to hold it. We don't have to spend money on the exterior. So those are some of the things we've done here. I think some of the other things I like to do is, you can see we do new numbers on everything, and that just adds to the aesthetic. I'm not going to get an increase in rent there, but when tenants walk up and they're comparing maybe this unit and that unit or something down the street, a new mailbox with newer numbers and the light above. As you can see, those just got in, so we still have to paint where the old numbers were. Mm-hmm. But those are the little things that we found that make a big difference with just leasing it faster and having maybe a higher class tenant come in. So there's a couple other things I'll show you guys in the back that we had to do, so let's go check it out.
Yeah, show off these egress windows you put in, because they are great.
So I have a question about these egress windows. How do you know, what is the code violations around egress?
Right.
And how do you know when you're supposed to install it, when you're gonna get in trouble? What does that
That's
look
right.
like?
So when we're flipping homes, egress really helps add the value, because we can add an extra bedroom, so it's conforming. So it increases the value of the property, because you can say you have more bedrooms. When it comes to apartments, it doesn't really get us any more in rent, but what it does is it lowers our liability, right? So it's all about liability, because if something was to happen and there was a fire or a flood or some kind of traumatic thing going on with the weather, and the tenant was not able to get out of the building and something happened to them, it would be like I've had friends that have had 7-figure lawsuits and they lose.
It'll wipe you out.
It'll wipe you out, absolutely. So the first thing we do, and for whatever reason, owners were able to get away with this. This building had been owned by, it was built in the 70s, so 4 or 5 different owners, and no one had put in egress. But the first thing we did was we had to pull permits, get the egress done, get the city of Aurora involved. And there was also, there were subsidized tenants living here. So I don't know how they didn't enforce that either, but this was one of the first order of business just because of liability.
Yeah.
Until this was in, I was not sleeping well at night, just because if something was to happen, we'd be held liable and it'd be really expensive. So when it comes to multifamily and in rentals, egress windows are really just a liability thing. You put them in there to decrease your liability. It's not really, I don't get any more in rent for it.
So risk management has to happen off
100%.
the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always call it it's like the same odds of getting struck by lightning. Like, you don't want it to happen. If it does, it's catastrophic. And so, like, for me and my clients, we don't buy places that don't have them, or that we can't put them in there, because it's not worth that 1 in a million or 1 in a billion chance.
What if? Sure.
To get that 7-figure lawsuit. And I mean, it'd be horrible, like, someone dies in your unit because you didn't put in $3,000.
Right.
Like, that'd be horrible.
It's just
So it's not necessarily a code requirement. It's something that you as an investor choose
Everyone
to
gets to choose to do it because it's grandfathered in, because the building didn't come with it, and because originally it was 5 units, so they probably had 2 forms of egress before. So, you know, in the last 20 years when they added the 4 new units, for whatever reason, they didn't enforce it because it's grandfathered in. But it's, for us, you know, when we're trying to grow and scale and have a bunch of properties, I mean, this is one of the first things we look at is liability.
What I don't understand is how did Section 8 inspector not like flag that? Because normally for Section 8, it's government voucher, you know, government subsidy stuff, and they have inspector come through to make sure for health and safety. I mean, they check for smoke detectors and carbon monoxides and outlet covers and all this stuff, and like egress windows. Like that blows my mind they didn't flag that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it passed, but it wasn't something that we were willing to take a risk on. So that was one of the other things. And then we've been talking in previous episodes about trash enclosures. And you know what you find in neighborhoods like this is that people tend to, as you can see here, just like dump stuff everywhere. So if you don't do a trash enclosure, it ends up just making your property look really, really ugly. So another one of the first things we do is add a trash enclosure to every property. And what it does, it just cleans it up. So you can see our property trash versus the neighbors. It's a big difference. And again, I'm not gonna get more rent for that. That's just a capital expense. But what it does is it just makes the property look more attractive and lease it up quicker. Let's check out another unit inside.
All right.
Okay, so I have a question. You put LVT in all of these rentals, but do you ever put carpet in?
Yeah, so no. In rentals, we learned very early on that as soon as you have one tenant with carpet, after they move out, it's disgusting, and you just end up replacing it. And if you don't replace it, it just gets really, really gross smelling. The quality of tenant you'll get, it's just not a pleasant sight. So all we ever do is LVT. Early on, we did do carpet because that's what we're used to with flips, and we were getting carpet for like $2 a square foot and this and that. But over time, like if your tenant moves out every 2 years, you end up paying like triple versus just putting LVT down, LVT and tile.
And so this stuff is durable.
Very durable.
I love it.
Yeah. So and this is $2 a square foot, about $1.50 to install. So it is a little bit more than carpet, but it'll last. This thing has a warranty for 10 years, and it should last 20 years. And so we've had pets, multiple kids. I mean, you know, we've had tenants in some of these places for a long time, between Denver and Des Moines, and we've just seen it hold up so much better than carpet. But that is one of the differences between single family flips, because a family that's gonna live in it and they're gonna take care of the carpet, they prefer carpet, right? Especially for kids, they fall in their bedrooms, they definitely want carpet, but it's a company rule, you cannot put carpet in, outlawed.
So let's talk about, because I know it's very interesting, you had the 5 or 6 separate meters, but you had some really funky stuff with the furnaces, electrical. I'm looking at the baseboard heaters over here. Tell us how you solved that problem for you and the future owner.
Yes, so like we talked about at the beginning, one of the challenges and why we call it value add properties was, one of the biggest problems was the HVAC and the mechanicals. So they had 5 furnaces, so they had ducting running all throughout every unit. 5 furnaces for 9 units. And if you're a tenant, like that was living here, they had to depend on someone else's temperature for what their unit was gonna be. So if the other person was cold, they were turning it up even if they're in the sun and they're hot, right? So it's terrible. So again, you just don't get as good of a class of tenant. So what we did was, we took all the ducting out, the 5 furnaces served the 5 units, and then we put electric baseboard heat in the other 4 units. And as you can see, there's a thermostat there, they get to control their own heat now. And the tenant pays electrical, right? So we have a rub system, but so the tenant—
explain that. How are they paying? You have 5 meters, but 9 tenants.
Right. So what we did was on this property, and this was again where you'd want to get a property manager involved with the property this complicated, but every tenant, it has a square footage of their unit. So based on the square footage, they pay pro rata for the electrical bill. The electrical bill every month is split out between 9 units. It's billed back, right? So the larger the unit, the more you're going to pay. And it's split up in, pro rata based on the square footage.
So the landlord has all 5 meters in his or her name.
That's right.
And then they are billing it back.
Billing it back. Okay. That's right. So the landlord doesn't pay it, the tenants pay it, and then the tenants also pay RUBS, $100 per unit for water, sewer, and trash.
And that's the flat rate for that, but then the electricals
fluctuates. It will fluctuate. That's right.
What about the gas meters?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. I honestly don't know. So we'll have to look outside. I believe it's 5 gas meters.
Okay, so same setup?
Sure. I think it's the same exact setup, yeah, because that's what it was built like.
My next question. So I know you get these properties, you get the tenants out, maybe some of the tenants have different leases. So are you rehabbing some of these properties with tenants in and rehabbing as you go, doing the whole building at one time? What does that look like?
Right. So that is complicated. Again, property management, you have to communicate with the tenants. When you have tenants that are existing in here, I can't just go in and like redo concrete with tenants. I have to give them notice. I have to tell them what we're doing. I have to post it. I have to communicate with them. Most tenants are cool and they end up being thankful because we're improving the property. So some of the inconvenience they're fine with living with, but we have to communicate. If I just showed up and started pulling their windows out and leaving it overnight, yeah, it'd be crazy.
Chaos.
It'd be chaos, yeah, it'd be an uproar. So you have to communicate, you have to post notice. Normally when we're just doing cosmetic stuff, flooring, paint, baseboard trim, cabinets, that kind of stuff, we can do it with tenants in it. It helps us with the cash flow because you don't clear the building. If we're moving walls and doing more CapEx and more, like bigger construction type scope of work, then we have to clear the building. The entire building, do everything at once. And what you get when you do that is the project goes faster, the construction, but you take your income down to zero. So it's give and take. So on this property, we were able to do it one at a time. And we just had to ask tenants to get into their unit to remove the ducting and do some of that. So it was very tricky. We had to communicate very clearly with the tenants, but net, it's better for them. They get to stay in a property instead of having to relocate, and they're gonna get to live in an improved property.
Okay, so some of the tenants stay. They're not,
yes.
You're just improving their property, raising the rent, and then
That's right.
Okay.
So sometimes what we've done is when we buy these buildings that have been owned for numerous years, and most people don't understand the management, a lot of them are just on month-to-month leases. So what we can do is we can say, okay, these are the 2 worst units with the lowest rent. We'll serve 30-day notices. We'll help them move. We give them the adequate time to find another place and relocate. And then when they're out, we renovate the unit and then fill it with a market tenant. And then we'll do that throughout the building.
Okay.
So we've currently renovated 7 of the 9. And the other 2 units didn't want to move. And we were able to give them a new range, paint, and I think we improved the HVAC system. So then they were fine with a rent bump.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, certainly. So your exit strategy on this specific building right now, I know that can change over time, but what's your exit strategy right now?
So right now, because of the market and because of this area, there's all this new development. Like right across the street, they're doing a 360-unit Hyatt house, extended stay motel. Down the street, they're doing a mixed-use building. So because the area's turned so much in the last 12 months since we owned it, we will look to sell it. But if we don't get our number, we'll just hold it, cash flow, and write it out. Since we have bank debt, there's really no urgency to sell it. On some of the other properties, we have private money at 8%, and those ones were much more eager to get
Motivated,
out of. Yeah,
sure.
You're right.
All right, so one of the things we like to do with this show is we like to bring people to ride along with us so you can learn from us, we can learn from you. A lot of the audience out there has the same questions and they want to do what you're doing, which is successful wholesaling. So what advice can you give someone out there watching on YouTube? Hey, they want to get into investing, get to wholesaling, they should do what?
Okay, so I guess maybe first we define wholesaling. A lot of people see it as kind of like you're this middleman in the market somehow doing something, making all this money, and it's easy, and you work 5 hours a week or something.
That's not true?
Well, sometimes you do work 5 hours a week.
That is true.
Right.
Later.
Right.
So what advice do I have? I mean, really you have to get involved with everyone in the market that is doing investing. So, I met TJ early on. He knows a lot of people. You just have to meet everyone that's doing deals, and then you kind of work, through the deals that way.
Let me ask you, but you say meet people, that's much
like it's
easier
easy
said
to
than
just
done. Yeah,
meet
how
people.
did you
Sure.
meet people? Are you knocking on doors? You go to RIA meetings? What'd you do?
Yeah, so a lot of meetup groups. I highly recommend this, get involved with a brokerage that does wholesaling or investing strictly. So if you want to do investment real estate, get into investment real estate. Don't get into real estate and then try to hop over, do it from the beginning. What I did is I worked at a wholesale brokerage, and you're kind of in a hamster wheel. You just go, you meet people, you go to meetup groups, you meet investors, you just work as hard as you can. It's really like a 40 to 60 hour a week job at first. And then you kind of start to learn. You're learning about deals. People are bringing deals to you. You're making phone calls to other buyers. Like, TJ, I learned about this one. Do you want it? That kind of thing. Walking properties. And then the more you're really doing that activity, the more you're sort of are in the middle of deals and can control deals and then bring them to people who want to buy them, like TJ.
So is there, this is like the chicken and egg question people ask me all the time. They want to get into wholesaling. Do they get a buyer's list first, or do they find the deals first, or do they do both?
Well, that's a great question. You got to kind of tap your head and rub your stomach at the same time. So you really need a buyer's list. You need a list of people that you know are actual buyers. So a lot of times I always tell people like meet 100 people because 5 to 8 of those are going to be actual buyers that will buy something this week. And
what were those numbers again?
If you meet 100 people, you're having 5 to 8 actual buyers that actually want a deal this week in their pipeline.
5 to 8% of the people you meet.
I would say. That's kind of like what I've learned over time. Yeah. And then obviously like it's a seller's market. So you're not really seeing a lot of deals unless you're actually looking for them. So I would say you need to be grabbing your buyers list and deals come from buyers lists as well. You know, investors need to sell things. If they don't really want to use that project, do that right now, don't have the capital for it. So they unload it and then you can bring it on to your next buyer. So building a buyers list, I say, is very important. But then you're going to need to do your entire acquisition strategy and really figure out, you know, am I going to knock on doors? Am I going to target pre-foreclosures? Am I going to, you know?
What did you do?
So at first, I just, you know, you can start some on the MLS. I would say probably the most successful tactic I used was just a network. Just meeting enough people to constantly like have the tenacity to call them, make a relationship with them. And then if you have trust there, they're gonna call you and say, hey, I've got to move this thing. I know you have people in the land world, you know, do you think anyone would want this? So people are key.
How did you connect with Terrance? I mean, you guys met through networking. What was the specific cold call, environment, what?
So I don't know if you remember or not, but the first deal that I broke off on my own and did was York Street. And I think you sent it to someone else at Net Worth that I had met.
Yeah.
And then we all got together. And then I was like, wait, she's the really good one. Yeah. So then I think you and I connected after that, and we've been in touch ever since.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think, we had a deal that, I don't know, TJ is a very unique investor because he's a yes man. I always say that he will take projects that most people will not take. And that's kind of the strategy investing, is like being creative, finding solutions. Where can I add value? I remember York Street had a short basement.
Right.
So, you know, a lot of times an investor will walk into a short basement and walk out and they'll be done with that deal. But TJ said, you know what, let's just not enclose the short basement. Let's keep it all open so it adds just like a little bit more height, but you've got some, you know, you have to watch your head on some spaces, just make it very obvious. And I don't know, how'd you guys do on that deal?
We made money. I mean, actually, it was actually really difficult. We got stopped by the city and had a bunch of issues, and we still made money. It was my first project. I was just figuring out construction. But one of the things that I've really respected over time is just how you've been able to transition, because single family was hot for a while, like 2014 to 17. We're doing a bunch of single family deals. And then I think when we were transitioning to multifamily, you transitioned to land, started working with more developers. So walk me through how you did that and what your advice is to wholesalers that are maybe in the same situation, that their single family buyers have dried up or the deals have dried up, they need to pivot. How did you handle that, and how'd you handle that so easily?
Well, I don't know if it was easy, but
you made it look easy.
The whole game is really just being adaptable.
Right.
So like you said, flips were out. We had flips going on 2014, 15, 16. The market tightens up. There was kind of what I call like a lot of mom and pop investors getting involved, and everyone's really like seeing HGTV and like kind of like, I want to get involved with this, which is great, right? But the market gets saturated. So I kind of, eked my way out of wholesaling because, I was seeing a lot of the same people. You show up at a house and see the same people, and that's when like we're all looking at the same deals. So I kind of got into land, and I love land. It takes a lot less. It's a lot of like desk work. Not a lot of having to go to the property and like, walk through hoarder houses and stuff. So I mean, I kind of did it out of a necessity, and then I kind of find a knack in it, and a lot of people don't do it, and so that's when you're kind of like onto something, is you might be doing something that, people say, hey, I heard you deal in land, that's kind of something I like realized I was getting phone calls for, so I said, I'll stay focused here. And
that's really great advice. I think we should repeat that, is that, you saw it getting, congested in single family. It was super saturated. You're seeing the same people. And then you went the total opposite direction, went to find something that no one else was doing so you could separate yourself. Yeah. So instead of being like worried like, oh, no one's doing land, I won't do it, you saw an opportunity and went the opposite direction of the herd.
Yeah,
Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, definitely. And it's paid off for sure.
So I got one more important question for you.
Yeah.
So Terrance and I met on BiggerPockets. We're both big proponents of it. Are you on BiggerPockets?
Yes.
All right. How has it helped your business, or what do you do with it?
It's been necessary from the beginning, since I worked at Net Worth, which was the wholesale brokerage that I worked initially. BiggerPockets is the place to go to kind of like create a profile. And then one of the resources I like a lot is just being able to post a question, So I'm kind of working on acquiring large multifamily units for Terrance now. And so, how do we go about this? Well, people in other cities are your best resource. Someone who's doing this, but you're not their competition. So what I do is, I'll go on BiggerPockets and just post a forum and get other people. People like to talk about what they're good at. People like to share advice and such. So that's one of the ways that I use it. Deal posting is obviously very valuable, but I think one of the most valuable things is just connecting with people in other cities that want to be on there as well.
I totally agree. The forums are my favorite thing on there. That's actually how you and I connected. All right, so thank you for coming out. I know you're busy doing deals. Terrance, thanks for letting us walk your property. If you guys want to connect with us, I'll put all the show notes in our BiggerPockets links in there. Get your BiggerPockets account and get with it. All right, everyone, welcome back to the financial section of this video today. So we got an interesting curveball with the videos here. Like most people around the world right now, we actually recorded the video walkthrough of us right before the COVID pandemic hit. And now we're recording the financials a couple months later, once we've actually got time to do it all safely. So we're going to give you some commentary as to what our original numbers were projecting and then how they are looking now. So Terrance, real quickly from your perspective, we did this 9-unit in Aurora. We walked it from a high level. What changed for you from your expectations before to now the COVID stuff?
Yeah, no, it's been a wild 3 or 4 months. When we initially recorded, we were basically renting units that we had renovated within the first week or 2 weekends of finishing. And I think during COVID, it made it much more difficult to lease it. We actually have 2 vacancies there right now. One person just left and another one that we had renovated, I think, in mid-March, so just before everything shut down. And so I think that's what's made it a little bit more difficult, is just leasing up units and being able to get the leases that we had projected. I think rents have come down, especially in Aurora, and then it's just taking a lot longer to lease.
And then from my side, because I'm on the brokerage side, it's just, the commercial lending world, man. Talk about just a freeze right there. Like it's been scrambling to find lenders. A few are still doing it, but the lending terms have changed a lot. Yeah. A lot of buyers are sitting on the sidelines right now. A
lot more hurdles, to get a deal done.
All right, so let's jump into this because we do want to talk about these numbers. It's really good. So Terrance, you took this place down for $920,000 and you put 20% down. Your loan amount was about $736,000. Your interest rate's at 5%, and that was interest only for
2 years.
2 years, okay. Yeah. So closing costs about $6,500 on here. So pre-COVID stuff, nothing changes there, right?
That's right.
And you're estimating about $150 in development cost?
Yeah, we're pretty much done with development.
And you're right around that same
I think we might be a little bit under, but real close to 150.
Great. So let's talk about the development operating analysis. So you were ballparking about $6,000 a month in rental income because you were turning 2 to 3 units at a time, right?
That's right.
So what's that look like from your perspective?
And when we purchased the building, there was 2 vacancies, and I think then there was one tenant that had been delinquent. So we naturally just started renovating those units. And then when we would finish, there was another tenant that was month to month. And then we would just either help them find another place or they would want to leave because they saw that the rents were going to increase. So it was just kind of a natural progression because when we purchased the building, there was already some vacancy that we could start. And it just looks like we're trying to renovate the building. We want to make it look as attractive as possible. So when the unit's finished, people don't look at it as a construction site. They look at it as a place they could still come in and have a comfortable place to live. And I guess that would probably be the biggest challenge is even though you're doing construction, not making it feel like a construction site for new tenants.
Now, when you were turning these units, how long was it taking to turn each unit typically?
The 2 bedrooms are probably 17 days. The 1 bedroom is probably closer to 2 weeks. And then the studio is probably just 7 days.
Okay. So, 1 to 3 week range?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So your RUBS, I think the previous landlord did not implement RUBS, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So $0 during then, but as you leased them up, you were
implementing
RUBS, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So your expenses while you're doing this, about just over $3,000 a month in interest payments to the bank. Roughly $500 a month in utilities. Taxes were about $340 a month. Insurance about $333 a month, and your monthly total is about $4,200 and change for the month. Anything really changed for you as COVID hit?
No, not. Pretty much. Actually, I would say the only thing that went down, I'd say, was maintenance, is because we were basically not doing maintenance. No one wanted us in their units. So then I'd say one of the positives was that there was basically no maintenance and repairs over the last 60, 90 days.
So then once you, and this took about a year for you to redevelop, right?
That's right.
Okay. So all in, assume about $50,000 in carrying cost for a while they're doing it. So once it's stabilized, so that means you've turned all the units, You've gotten all of them leased up to market rates. You're expecting about $114,000 in rental income per year. And with RUBS, about just $10,800 a year in annual income. Any big changes there on this property?
No, we're pretty close to that. I think the final 2 units, we may have to come down a little bit to lease. So far, we've been able to get the rents in this property, but for the final 2 units, we'll see how. The nice thing is we're in the summer now, but we'll see how the last 2 units end up.
So now we're assuming, a 5% vacancy, which is standard underwriting, at least until pre-COVID, but eventually I'll come back. But 5% vacancy is standard underwriting. So that leaves you an effective gross income of about $119,500 for the year. So that's your EGI. So we'll take that EGI, we'll subtract out all the annual expenses. And so when we put this together, we had estimated about $6,000 in annual or taxes per year.
That's right.
And so what happens here in Colorado is every 2 years, they readjust property taxes, and then your property taxes are the same for those 2 years. So I forget the exact numbers, but when you had first, the 2018 assessment, they were like $4,500 or something.
That's right.
So we estimated around a $6,000 tax increase. But in reality, it came out to a lot higher. Once the assessment came out, and this is all done at like the county level, it came out to like $10,000 and change.
That's right.
So a lot higher than we expected. And looking at comps, it was way higher than all the other buildings that we could see.
That's right.
So I know you're dealing with, you hired a lawyer, you're engaged in the city. Like, talk to us about what happened and how you dealt with that.
Yeah, so they actually raised the taxes in October or November of last year. For whatever reason, I don't know if it was because of the office or change of address, I don't know, but we didn't get the letter. So when we realized that the taxes had increased almost double, we basically hired an attorney that was specialized in protesting taxes and doing a tax protest. And we've been in touch with with Adams County, who's in charge of property tax assessments, and they basically agreed to lower the taxes to $1 million assessed value. And I believe when they doubled the taxes, it was closer to 1.4 million, 1.3 or 1.4.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So they're going to lower it 30 or 40%. And I believe it's going to be still a little bit higher than 6,000, but it should be a lot less than 10. We're projecting it to be somewhere between 7 and 8,000. So it's better than where it was, but it's higher than what we had anticipated. And basically just comes down to where the comps are at in Aurora. So it's good for Adams County that property values are going up for multifamily in this area. And it's bad, I guess, for us as holding the property is, taxes are more than what we had anticipated.
And really, this is just, one of the things that you deal with.
That's right.
As you're turning properties. It's just that, and every state's different, but Colorado every 2 years, that's the way they do it out here.
Yeah.
So, going forward, anything that you could have done differently that you'll write into your standard operating procedure. So every 2 years that happens, like anything different you guys will do?
We just needed to be on top of it more. I think one of the positive things with post-COVID is that assessors are being very understanding and empathetic to property values not being as high as they had anticipated. So we're taking it as an opportunity to protest a lot of properties right now that basically may have more vacancy. Rents may not be what they had projected at other properties that they're using as comps. But I think just staying on top of that 2 year, had we been on top of it last year, we may have been able to get it even lower. But it's just a natural, it's just part of the game, is you own multifamily properties in a market like Denver, rents are going to go up, values are going to go up, and you're going to have to be prepared to pay more in taxes.
So insurance, about $4,100 a year estimating, utilities, $10,800. Now that's the exact same number you put in there for RUBS.
Yeah, it's just a wash. Legally, you can't use RUBS as an income generator, so it just needs to be a direct wash between what you're charging.
Trash, water, sewer,
everything outside of the property. Yeah.
The repairs and maintenance, you are estimating $5,400 a year in repairs and maintenance. So what's that? I think we did the math here, $50 per unit per month, right?
And the reason why we have that so low, on a property this size and this age, you could be closer to 60 or 70, but basically replace the roof, the windows, the gutters, all the HVAC and the electrical. So there's just not a lot of room for a big capital expenditure or for, you're going to have leaky toilets all the time, no matter how new the plumbing is. But that's why we had it at 50. That could be a little aggressive, but in our historic experience, after we do a renovation this size, we're pretty close to 50.
And plus, you put in very, rental property appropriate finishes. The LVT flooring, the countertops, all that stuff. Like, it's durable stuff that should less
should hold up.
You're not replacing carpet every 12 months.
That's right. Every turn. That's right. Yeah.
So property management, saying about 7%, because a lot of times property management will charge a bit less for that for a multi-unit, but then we round up a little bit more to help handle leasing fees and items like that. So office expenses, $900 a year for just, payroll, office stuff.
Admin, yeah.
Watching out for tax notices, handling all that stuff. Grounds maintenance, $1,500 a year. And I know we'd estimated that, but now you're saying you actually think that's a little bit high because you pretty much zero skipped everything, right?
Yeah, what we've tried to do on all of our properties in Denver is just, because it's so dry here, is just we don't want to put irrigation, and it looks really bad to have brown grass in the front of your property. So
it's expensive to water too.
That's right. Oh yeah, irrigation's not cheap, water's not cheap. So we zero-scaped it. It looks really clean, and so basically all you should have is snow removal, at which it's between $50 and $100 per shovel. There's not a parking lot, so it's really just shoveling the front and the walkways. And then if you want to trim the bushes, so $1,500 should be pretty conservative. If you figure $75 per removal, if you have 10 snows, you're at $750, and then you have another $750 for trimming the hedges and anything else you want to do with the trees and bushes.
And then the last line I'm on here is for replacement reserves. And this is usually, I know some lenders lump it all together, repairs and maintenance. Some like to separate repairs and maintenance and replacement reserves.
Right.
We generally like to separate it out just for better bookkeeping. But replacement reserves is, hey, that money you're putting away because, hey, it's a brand new roof, but in 5 years, 10 years, or the next hailstorm, you'll have to put a new roof on there. And so this is just money meant for a
rainy day. That's right, yeah.
So your total expenses are about $39,300 for the year on this property. And so once you have it stabilized, that leaves you net operating about $80,000. Now, as we look at this, that actually gives us a 32.8% operating expense ratio, which is, right in the ballpark we see in Denver. They're usually like 28 to 33%.
Yeah.
And that's the expenses, all your non-mortgage expenses, compared to your net operating income. So your monthly NOI is $6,600 a month. Your interest payment is just over $3,000 a year. And so while you're holding this place to finish out everything, list it, sell it, all that stuff, you're making about $3,600 a month in cash flow.
If it's fully stabilized, that's right, yeah.
But that's the plan, right?
That's right, yeah.
And if it's not fully stabilized, you might be making $3,000 a year.
That's right, yeah. It's still not bad.
A little different from a single family flip where you're negative the whole time.
Negative
right?
large every month. That's right.
All right, so let's talk about the 3-price exit scenario here. Now, in this part of town for Aurora, a lot of times things will trade between like a 5.5 to like a 5 3/4 cap rate.
Right.
So we have 3 prices on here at a 5.5, 5.75, and a 6% cap rate. And since this is a commercial property, we can use the income approach to evaluate it.
Right.
Because that's the main way they evaluate it. And then also get some comps to verify it. But assuming, let's go with the 5.75% sales price or the 5.75% cap rate. That'll put you to a sales price of $1.395 million. So just under $1.4 million. Assuming a 6% selling cost for you to list it, pay all the closing costs on the broker fees. We subtract out your original purchase price of $920. We subtract out your development cost to $150. We subtract out your carrying cost. We've also added in the money you made while you're holding it. So you're still, got $43,000 in carrying cost. That leaves you with a profit of just under $200,000 selling this place.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's solid. It's obviously with COVID, it's good to buy things very conservatively and to be disciplined. And I think that's the good part is when you go through a downturn, you realize how those fundamentals really pay off, because had we not been so disciplined at the beginning, because I think, when we first looked at this, they were trying to list it for 1.1 million, so thankfully we were disciplined and stuck to our underwriting. And, even if we have to take a haircut on that, we're still in the black, and, we learned a lot, had some fun, and still made a couple bucks.
All right, so let's talk about what it looks like for the end user, for the investor, because this is a win-win situation.
Right.
You guys are doing your job, and you go in there, do a great job, you operate it. And then for a lot of investors, they don't have a redevelopment company. They just want to park their money.
Right.
They've got their other job or business. They want a great investment that's turnkey. So if you sold this at a 5.75% cap rate for $1,395, we assume a 25% down payment, so about $350,000. Then about $10,000 in loan fees, $7,500 in acquisition fees, so that's inspections and all this other stuff. All in, they're in for about $366,000. And so these loan estimates were based off of like pre-COVID stuff.
That's right.
Now the lending world's gotten a little bit wonky, so we're just going to stick with what we had underwritten at before. So their annual P&I payment, so principal and interest, would be about $62,000 a year, and that's assuming a 5-year ARM over 30 years at a 4.375% interest rate, which is very, very doable, at least pre-COVID.
Right.
Now, if we look at the return on investment quadrant, the very first way to make money in real estate is cash flow. Now, on this, they'll make about $18,000 a year in cash flow. And again, to clarify, this is when Terrance sells it, and then someone else comes along and buys it. They'll be making about $18,000 a year in cash flow, which is just under a 5% cash-on-cash return, which is pretty good for Denver. Appreciation, assuming it appreciates, they might get an 11% return that year, or about $41,000 in equity that year. Debt pay down, because every time that the new owner is writing their check to the bank or whoever, part of that money goes towards interest payment and part of that money goes towards principal payment. So when you pay down your loan, you're also getting some principal reduction as well, which is equity that you can...
It's like a savings account, right? Yeah. $1,200 a month going into a savings account.
Yeah. I always call it my real estate piggy bank.
Right.
Because you can tap into it later.
Right.
So you're going to get a $17,000 return on that for that year, just under 5%. And tax benefits or depreciation, you're going to get $14,000 a year in tax benefits, assuming, I think we put a 25% tax bracket in here, and that's almost a 4% return on your money. So altogether, even though, some people say this would be an expensive property. Oh my gosh, you're only getting a 5% cash-on-cash return. You can't just look at cash flow on properties. You have to look at upside. You have to look at the total return. This is close to a 25% total return on all the money they invest. I don't get it in my 401ks.
That's right. Yeah, you have to look at globally. I think one interesting thing to point out is appreciation. So in single family, appreciation is just based on comps. And multifamily, it's based on rent increases. So the value of the property is directly tied to the rents. So rents have increased in Denver historically, 4 to 6% a year?
Yep.
So, you can conservatively say 2 to 3%. So if you increase rents on every unit across the 9 units, 2 to 3% a year, that's where that appreciation number comes in.
All right. So if you look at the 5th-year return, because a lot of times those investors who buy it, a lot of times around year 5 or year 7, it's not common for them to sell and do a 1031 exchange or to do a refinance and pull out some cash to tap in the real estate piggy bank and go out there and then buy more properties.
Redeploy, that's right.
Exactly. Redeploy their equity. So at that point, they're making, about $31,000 a year in cash flow. But then their cumulative cash flow between those first 5 years is $143,000. And their total... Got a little trigger happy there. Their total equity at that point would be at $684,000.
So over 5 years, that's the equity that their $300,000 is returned.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So, that includes their initial down payment of,
right.
3 something we said. Right. But on top, they got another, basically double their equity.
It's pretty much doubled in 5 years.
Plus, they got cash flow.
That's
That's why a lot of times people then take that money out and do a 1031 or do a cash out refi, go out there and buy more properties.
And that's not including the depreciation on their taxes, right?
Correct. Yeah. Right. We're not even factoring that in this return here. Right. So the total equity is appreciation and also your debt pay down. All right, so that wraps up for here. So if you guys want to reach out to us, have questions, reach out to us. All of our handles are on the screen. They'll be in the show notes. We love talking real estate, and especially if anyone's here in Denver, please reach out. We love networking. It's how we find deals, how we find clients. If you want to join us as a guest on the next Ride Along show, reach out to us.
That's right. We got new deals coming up, and we got new shows that we're going to be filming. So yeah, reach out, and we're looking for a new guest.
So let me get one question here. So with all the craziness going on here in COVID, a lot of newer investors are watching this.
Right.
What opportunities are there? Are there any opportunities there for newer investors that want to get into doing what you're doing? How can a new investor take advantage of the COVID stuff to get their foot in the door for investing?
Yeah, I'm not a market. People ask, is it going to go down, or rent's going to go down? Is multifamily going to get obliterated, or people are just going to go back to buying homes and living in single family homes as rentals? So I'm not, I can't look, I don't have a crystal ball, but I, just over time, over the last 10 years, I've been a fundamentalist. I just buy good assets at a price that makes sense for me and my business. And so I would say that now is no different. I think that there's a lot of opportunity out there. There's going to be a lot of property on the market because there is so much fear and anxiety and unknown. I think it presents an opportunity. Couple that with debt being very difficult. So if you have cash, if you have a really strong 401k, if you have equity in your home or equity in other investment properties, I think the next 3 to 6 months is a great time to tap into it because lending is so difficult, which means there's going to be less buyers. There's going to be a lot of property. And I think it's going to present a buying opportunity the next 3 to 6 months.
Great. All right, guys, we got questions. Again, leave your questions in the comments or reach out to us. Thanks, Terrance.
Thanks.